Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. In today's edition, I want to cover Jonas Vingegaard's wins, and I want to cover and rate the top teams of the 2024 season so far in this early 24. Now, I told you earlier that I had UAE Team Emirates as one of the #1 ranked teams of the 24 seasons, followed by Visma Lease Bike, because UAE Team Emirates had 6 different riders winning, and that was before Tadej Pogacar even raced Strade Bianche. But now we finished Paris-Nice and we finished Trino Adriatico. So my list is going to get reshuffled because Visma Lease Bike is looking pretty solid after that win from Jorgensen there at Paris-Nice where he beat Remco Evenepoel. And then, of course, another win from Jonas Vingegaard when we're at Trino Adriatico. A remarkable, dominating display from Jonas Vingegaard. Now we go back to the beginning of the season of 2024 for Jonas Vingegaard. He was the second rider of the 4 big favorites to start his season at O Gran Camino, and he dominated there. The time trial was a neutral stage that they didn't give towards GC, so the fact that he lost time and didn't win the first time trial didn't mean anything. It was not a GC marker at all, because Jonas Vingegaard knew once they neutralized the stage and everyone did it on their normal road bikes that he no longer had to put any efforts. But stage 2, he dominated everyone, and it was a spectacular ride and a very difficult ride when he puts in the first attack and he looks on his wheel and he has Cepeda and Egan Bernal locked onto his wheel after his first acceleration, and they clawed their way back up to him. That's a difficult moment right there for a rider that's trying to dominate everyone, wondering exactly, am I feeling really that good, or are the guys behind me going to sit on there, get a good draft, and then jump me before the top of the climb, and I end up finishing second or third? So a lot of times when you're racing strong, you have great form, and you're super explosive, and you look back and there's still somebody on your wheel, you start to worry a little bit about that. And while I was watching that stage 2 there of O Gran Camino, I was thinking that this was a spectacular ride once Jonas, he stayed on the front and then dislodged Cepeda and of course Egan Bernal, the last rider to come off for Ineos. Once he soloed that stage 2 there at O Gran Camino and then stage 3 started, it was another spectacular big attack that when he went over the top of the climb, he had the whole Ineos team back there with Josh Tarling trying to do full pulling on the front. Now, Josh Tarling's work back there was a little bit amateurish once he started going down the descent and he was gapping off the GC favorites back there with Egan Bernal in there. Then there was a split between the two groups. It wasn't the most intelligent chasing back there from Ineos' Josh Tarling, and Egan Bernal probably should have got on the radio and told him, hey, you're dropping me, this is not helping at all. But it was still so dominating display from Jonas Vingegaard that you can't leave out that the man from Denmark is riding on spectacular form. Okay, he wins the next stage, he wins the general classification. We see Lenny Martinez is about 2 minutes back on GC when it's all said and done. Egan Bernal, the Colombian, he ends up finishing 3rd on general classification. And Jonas Vingegaard takes the race lead, he takes the KOM jersey, he takes the sprint points jersey, and of course they take the team classification with Visma Lease Bike at that first outing there at O Gran Camino for Jumbo-Visma's Jonas Vingegaard. Now he goes into Trino Adriatico. This was a little bit interesting on stage 1, right? We saw Juan Ayuso win the time trial, and he beat Jonas Vingegaard by 22 seconds. Jonas finished something like 9th on that day and lost some time up there to Ayuso, who beat none other than Filippo Ganna, the Ineos rider who's a time trial specialist. So started looking at it interesting while I was covering Paris-Nice on the butterfly effect and still watching Trino Adriatico on the side. I was very interested in that loss there on the stage 1 time trial of Trino Adriatico because it was 22 seconds. But when you really look at it, a rider of his size, he's a bit smaller than me, he's about 5'8", and he comes in at about 132 pounds. That, when you go into stage 1, when everybody's rested and it's a time trial, is super difficult for a GC rider that's specifically a climber like Jonas Vingegaard is. We know he can win time trials. We saw it at the Tour de France last year, and no other time trial in the history of time trials was more spectacular than we saw Jonas's win at the Tour de France on stage 16 of the individual time trial in 2023. It was dominating. Tadej Pogacar, when we go back and we talk about Planche de Belfi time trial, that was spectacular too, but you're going up a climb. Last year's race, of course, had a climb, but it wasn't Planche de Belfi to the finish. It was certainly a faster TT on last year's individual time trial, the Tour de France. It doesn't come more spectacular, but I'm going to get a little bit more into that later. Now, Trino Adriatico, we see the sprinters take into effect, where we see Jasper Philipsen win a stage, later Phil Bauerhaus wins stage 3, and then Jonathan Milan wins stage 4 for Trek. We start looking at the mountain stages that come up. Visma Lease bike don't even hesitate. They go right into the most simplest of all tactics, and any tactic that I would ever use, the only one that I would ever use for the kind of form that Jonas Vingegaard is, where Visma Lease bike get on the front and they just blow things up. Wilco Kelderman and Steven Kruijswijk do a solid job of destroying the peloton. And then, of course, Jonas Vingegaard just decimates the field back there, leaving Ayuso and Jai Hindley from Bora Hansgrohe surviving to take what's left over of the positions on the stage, and of course the general classification, because Jonas Vingegaard goes on to do the same thing, soloing the next mountain stage at Trino Adriatico. When that's all said and done there at Trino, he wins the general classification by about 1 minute and 25 seconds on Juan Ayuso from UAE Team Emirates, and Jai Hindley just in third there at the general classification. But he wins points and he wins the KOM2 team classification, go to UAE Team Emirates at Trino Adriatico. Now, when you look at it from my perspective as a 25-year bike racer pro, I look at Jonas Vingegaard, the only chink I can see at all in his armor, which means he could be scarier in the future. Remember, Primož Roglič didn't have a very good Paris-Nice where he lost a lot of time. Remco Evenepoel's form at Paris-Nice was the best, I think, the strongest rider. He wasn't the best rider at Paris-Nice, but he was the strongest, I believe. Jorgensen was the best at Paris-Nice. But when you look at Remco Evenepoel, his form dropped a little bit. It's not quite as sharp as we see with Tadej Pogačar, Jonas Vingegaard. Primož Roglič, of course, we know his is a bit more off. He's the least spectacular of this early 24 season of the 4 favorites. But when I look at Jonas Vingegaard, his chink, going back to that topic, the only thing that I see for Jonas Vingegaard is that stage 1 time trial at Trino Adriatico where he lost 22 seconds. Now that could be put down to a lot of reasons. Like I said earlier in the video, it could be his size. All the big guys come in completely fresh. It's completely flat. Not super technical, but a few turns that are narrow there in the time trial of stage 1 of Trino Adriatico. But what I always experienced as a GC rider myself is that the time trialing, when I was winning time trials, that was when I was 100% on form. And I would be spectacular, whether if they're early time trials, but more spectacular in the later ones, as I'll speak about a little bit here later. With Jonas Vingegaard's 22-second loss, if that time trial had come after a couple mountain stages, I might be more worried about it, but since it's stage 1, I'm not too much. But as a pure climber, if he had won stage 1, I would say right now he's 100% on his best form, because for a climber to win climbing stages is not so big, but when a climber wins time trial stages, that means he's riding on fantastic form. The opposite can be said for a time trial specialist. As teammates, of course, with Fabian Cancellara, when he won time trials, it was expected. No one expected him to lose time trials. But when he goes and he wins Tour of Swiss, then you know he's 100% on form. When he goes to the 2013 Vuelta a España with me and he wins the individual time trial on stage 11 of the Vuelta a España, no big deal. He's supposed to do it. But when he's leading me up the final climbs and I'm looking down at my power meter and I'm doing 450, 500 watts at times, when I got a guy that weighs 30, 40 pounds more than I did at that year's Vuelta a España, you know he's 100% on form as a time trial specialist because he's dominating in the mountains too. Well, the same can be said for Jonas Vingegaard, but the opposite effect. If he dominates at the time trials like we saw at last year's Tour de France, you know he's 100% on form. So it's scary to think, for me right now, sitting up here and beyond the coverage, that Jonas Vingegaard might not be 100% on form because he lost 22 seconds to Juan Ayuso on that stage 1 Trino Adriatico. But he's still so spectacular that whole groups back there could not get organized enough to even do damage control there on Jonas Vingegaard. When he took off on the first big mountain stage of Trino Adriatico, we had multiple riders back there and they couldn't even get organized because they were so tired. It was Del Toro, Isaac Del Toro, the Mexican rider from UAE Team Emirates, that was doing most of the work in that group of favorites back there because Jonas had destroyed everyone. So think about it right now from my perspective. If you think that he might not be 100% because he didn't win the stage 1 time trial there at Trino Adriatico, there could be more to come from Jonas Vingegaard. I have him ranked as number 2 on the butterfly effect and beyond the coverage. Tadej Pogacar is number 1, but maybe I'm wrong. There's no doubt about the form there of Jonas Vingegaard has gone up. Now, I'm not going to say I'm wrong yet because I'm still taking Tadej Pogacar because we all saw the Strade Bianche ride of 81 kilometers, and that was his only race. We have Saturday's race of Milan-San Remo coming up for Tadej Pogacar, and we'll see if he can improve. But if he doesn't dominate at Milan-San Remo like he did at Strade Bianche, wow, I could be having a switch that's coming up here on the butterfly effect and beyond the coverage of who's the number 1 ranked rider in the world, and it may just be Jonas Vingegaard after Saturday's Milan-San Remo. Now, let's talk about teams and let's rate some teams because there's some surprise teams up on my list. I had UAE Team Emirates as number 1 up until Paris-Nice and Tirreno Adriatico. I'm going to flip it now. I'm going to have Visma Lease Bike as the number 1 ranked team in the world right now in this early 24 season. And then I'm going to have UAE Team Emirates as number 2. But both teams have been spectacular. They're so close, it could flip-flop at any weekend here of the 24 season without a doubt. Because, as I said, Milan-San Remo's coming. If Tadej Pogacar solos there, maybe I flip it back. I don't know. I'm going to have to look at how he wins. I don't rate it just by wins. It's how the teams have dominated. But when you look at Paris-Nice and you see how Jorgensen, one of the support riders there for Visma Lease Bikes, Jonas Vingegaard, and he wins over Remco Evenepoel and Primoz Roglic, that starts bumping the team up there in the list. When you look at the guys he's beaten, when it was Brandon McNulty there, UAE Team Emirates, that's how the teams flip and flop. But they're so close that at any point in time, they can flip over from weekend to weekend without a doubt. Third on my list, I have Pseudo Quickstep because Remco Evenepoel was so dominating in the early part of the season down at Algarve. I think he still was the strongest rider at Paris-Nice. Tactically, he didn't ride smart, and he wasn't the best overall rider. I already told you Jorgensen was. But he's still on good form. He still won Stage 8. He still took the sprint jersey, the KOM jersey there. He still soloed for something like 50K at his first race of the season, and he still won Algarve. So Pseudo Quickstep I have as the number 3. The 4th team is when things get interesting. When you really look at it, I have Trek, Little Trek, as the number 4 ranked team at the 2024 season right now because Mads Pedersen was dominating at the early part of the season. At Paris-Nice, I loved the way they raced, and if he hadn't gone from 300 meters, if he went from 200, 225, I understand the situation that he believes he had to go at that point in time. I believe he needed to hesitate because going at that time is not going to bring you the win against Olaf Koy. But of course, everyone sitting at home goes, Chris, you have hindsight. Yes, hindsight helps a lot, but I still try to tell you as I saw it in the race and give you my perspective of real life time and not give you a hindsight perspective. Going at 300 meters at any point in time for a sprinter, unless it's a complete tailwind, is a bad move to go. So Mads Pedersen made some mistakes there, but I still love the ex-Road World Champion and think he did a phenomenal job at Paris-Nice of keeping his team and controlling the race the way he should, just coming up a bit short. So I have Trek, like I said, as number 4 because Skilmos won at Paris-Nice, and then of course they had Jonathan Milan win 2 stages at Tirreno Adriatico. They're my number 4 ranked team. The number 5 ranked team I'm going to put down as Bora Hansgrohe because Danny Martinez had spectacular wins against Remco Evenepoel down in Algarve to beat him not once but twice on the mountain stages. We look at the 6th team I'm going to have as Alpecin de Koenig because Jasper Philipsen won at Tirreno Adriatico, and we know Mathieu van der Poel is going to do something special on Saturday. So I'm kind of throwing them up there with the hope that Mathieu van der Poel does something at Milan-San Remo, but I still think they're still ahead of Ineos. Ineos I have as my 7th team, which haven't been that spectacular this season. Josh Charling won the individual time trial at O Gran Camino, but like I said, that stage was neutralized in terms of the GC, so we're not certain exactly how deep all the competitors went hard on the pedals to win that stage when it didn't count towards GC. But they have been at the front. Egan Bernal has been showing his face. He does show a big step up in form. We know Tom Pidcock is going to come back around at some point in time and win some stuff. But at the moment, Ineos are 7th ranked team here in the 2024 season. And I got Alpecin de Koenig mainly because Mathieu van der Poel hasn't raced, and that's their number 1 star rider there, versus Ineos have got all of their guys racing, and they still haven't come out with what is a sizable big win here at the 24 season. So Alpecin is jumping over Ineos at the 6th, And of course, Ineos is the 7th ranked team. Everybody outside of them, some French teams have had some stuff with FDJ, of course, wearing the race leader's jersey at Paris-Nice. That was big from Plithy. But outside of that, the rest of the teams all need to get back up on the wagon and start winning some races here in the 24 season so that they can fight to go up into that top 7 ranking. Because really, Ineos is the team that hasn't been winning, but they've still been at the front. They've still been showing their face a ton, so I like them. And actually, if you force me to pick its 8th team right now, I'd say it's Two Door. Two Door is a small team, and they want to stage at Paris-Nice. They're going number 8. So if you're behind number 8, that means you need to get into the training mode and get serious and start winning some races, because Two Door Cycling right now with their budget's got to be one of the smallest budgeted teams in the European peloton, and I have them top 10. So other teams outside of top 10, you guys better get on the horse and start riding fast right now, because you guys are dropping back there, and you got a team like Two Door Cycling that's ahead of you guys, who even though outside of that win at Paris-Nice, they still have been showing their face at all of the races that they've been at this early 24 season. I've seen their jerseys left and right. So hats off, tip of the hat there to Two Door Cycling to getting inside the top 10 of my favorites up here on the Butterfly Effect and Beyond the Coverage. Hope you liked today's video. Make sure you like and subscribe. Milan San Remo starts on Saturday, and you know the Butterfly Effect's going to be hot once the race finishes. You tune in to my channel, so hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys real soon.